Welcome everyone to today's discussion. We've got an exciting topic lined up that I think will spark some fascinating insights and maybe even a little debate.
Absolutely. Whether you're here to learn, challenge your perspective, or just enjoy some thought-provoking conversation, you're in the right place. We're diving into the complexity of the human body today, a subject that's as relevant as it is intriguing.
Okay, so get this right. Our bodies are like walking chemistry sets, reacting to like everything with all these crazy chemicals. You sent in some articles about how our senses, A and D, even our thoughts, they trigger these reactions. And I gotta say, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is. It shows how everything inside us is connected. We think about the body in these separate systems, but it's way more fluid and fascinating for sure.
Totally. So to really deep dive into this, let's imagine, okay, you're looking at a picture, let's say a breathtaking mountain vista. That makes you want to just book a plane ticket right away.
Okay, got it. So light from that picture hits your retina, right? And that starts this whole chain reaction. It's all about a molecule called rhodopsin. And it changes shape when light hits it. That's what triggers the signals that go to your brain.
Rhodopsin. It sounds like something from Star Trek. But wait, so this happened on a tiny level in our eyes, but we experience it as, wow, those mountains are amazing. How does the brain decide if something looks good or not?
That's where the amygdala comes in. It's kind of like the brain's emotional evaluator, always scanning what's coming in from our senses. So in this case, it decides, hey, this mountain view is awesome, and bam, it triggers dopamine.
Dopamine, the feel-good chemical everyone's talking about. So even just looking at something nice floods our brains with this reward stuff. No wonder we love looking at pretty pictures online, right?
Totally. And this is just the start. It's not just seeing it, it's the whole experience, right?
Yeah.
Your brain might even release oxytocin, the sometimes called the love hormone, that adds to that peaceful content feeling you get from the picture.
So like a double dose of happy chemicals. But what happens when we see something, well, unpleasant or even scary? Like instead of mountains, it's a spider. I know, not everyone's favorite.
Right. Well, then a different system kicks in the sympathetic nervous system. It's our built-in alarm. That's the fight or flight response everyone's heard of.
Okay, so our heart races. We might jump back from the screen. Even though it's just a picture of a spider, it's like our bodies haven't figured out digital threats yet.
Exactly. But think about it. From way back, evolution, for our ancestors, a spider, that could be real danger. So reacting fast was super important. And this same system, it kicks in whether the threat is real or not. It can be pretty intense.
So our ancient wiring is still there. Makes me wonder, how does that fight or flight thing actually change depending on the situation? Is it always the same level of intense?
That's a great question. Yeah, the intensity can be different, based on how threatening it seems, and even your past experiences. Like a small stress might just make your heart beat a bit faster. But a big threat, whoa, that could be a full-on adrenaline rush. And what's interesting, being stressed a lot can actually change how sensitive that system is. So you're more likely to trigger fight or flight, even for stuff that's not that bad.
Wow, so our bodies are learning and adapting based on what we go through.
It makes you think, what happens if that system is on too often long term? Is it actually bad for us?
Researchers are still figuring that out, for sure. But chronic stress, that keeps the fight or flight switched on. It can do some damage health-wise, like it can mess with your immune system, make it hard to sleep, and even increase the risk of getting sick. It's like having your foot on the gas pedal all the time. Something's got to give eventually.
Okay, so definitely not something to trigger all the time. But before we stress about stress too much, let's switch gears. Let's talk about another sense hearing. What's happening chemically when we hear something, say, a song we just love?
All right, so sound waves, they go into the ear and they make your eardrum vibrate. Those vibrations go to the cochlea. It's this spiral-shaped thing in your inner ear. Super sensitive, it can pick up even tiny sound vibrations.
Cochlea, another one of those cool-sounding body parts.
Yeah.
But how does it actually, translate those vibrations into something our brain gets? Inside the cochlea, there are these tiny hair cells, and they move when those vibrations hit them. Those hair cells are what change that mechanical energy from the sound into electrical signals. And those get sent to the brain through the auditory nerve.
So it's like Our ears have built-in microphones, A&D translators.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the sound itself, right? Certain songs can, like, bring back strong emotions, memories. How does the brain make those connections?
That's the limbic system again, especially the hippocampus. That part's super important for making memories. It links sounds with certain memories and emotions. That's why a song can, like, take you right back to a specific time and place. You feel all those feelings again.
That's why I can't listen to some songs without getting totally nostalgic. But I guess it's not always good, right? What happens when we hear something awful, like nails on a chalkboard?
Our brains, they're wired to be sensitive to certain sounds that, like, signal danger. And that nails on chalkboard sound, it shares frequencies with alarm calls that primates make. So it might be because of evolution why we react so strongly to it.
So even though it's not a real threat, our brains think it is. Speaking of strong reactions, let's move on to smell. It's wild how one scent can trigger like a flood of emotions and memories.
Yeah, smell is different. It skips some of the brain's normal processing centers and goes straight to the limbic system. That direct connection makes it really powerful for triggering emotions and memories.
So we're reacting before we even think about the smell. Explains why the smell of baking cookies can take me right back to my grandma's kitchen.
Exactly. And on the other hand, bad smells, those can trigger disgust. That's, an evolutionary thing to protect us from stuff that could be harmful. Think of spoiled food that smell tells you to stay away.
So our noses are like safety detectors too. It makes you realize that all our senses are always giving us info about the world. And our bodies react on all these different levels. And chemicals, they're a big part of shaping how we experience everything. But we've only just started.
Yeah, it really is amazing how fast our bodies react. A lot of times we don't even realize it's happening. We've been talking about stuff outside of us, but our inner world too, right? Thoughts and emotions, those trigger a whole bunch of chemical reactions as well.
Right. It's like there's this whole landscape inside that we're not always tuned into. So what if, let's say, I'm thinking about a trip I'm going to take and I'm super excited about it. What's going on in my brain then?
Well, even just the anticipation of something good, that can start a chain reaction. So you're picturing yourself on this trip, enjoying everything, right? Your prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that does planning and decisions, that starts working.
So it's not just a thought that pops up and disappears. My brain is actually working on this future event.
Exactly. It's checking out the details, what could happen, and the big one, how you feel about it. And since you're looking forward to it, your amygdala, that's the emotion center, it's basically like, yeah, this is awesome, and boom, dopamine gets released.
Dopamine again, our reward system's favorite thing. So even just thinking about something fun can make us feel good.
Yeah. It's like our brains are giving us a preview of the happiness we're going to get. But it's not just dopamine, right? There are other chemicals involved in that excited anticipation too.
Oh, for sure.
Your hypothalamus, that controls a lot of your automatic body stuff, that gets involved. It might tell your pituitary gland to release endorphins. Those are the natural painkillers that give you that euphoric feeling.
Endorphins, right? Those are the same ones that get released when you exercise, yeah. So I can get a runner's high just from daydreaming about my vacation.
That's kind of wild. What about when our thoughts aren't so good, though? Like when we're stressed out or worried?
Well, the thing is, our brains, they kind of have a negativity bias. They tend to focus on threats, even if they're not real or happening right now. That's left over from way back in our evolution for survival. So if you're stressing about a deadline at work or you're anxious about a presentation, your amygdala, that alarm bell goes off. And the fight or flight thing happens again, even though I'm not in actual danger. So not exactly a recipe for feeling good, I'm guessing.
Not really, no. Your sympathetic nervous system takes charge. Adrenaline and cortisol get pumped into your bloodstream. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure too. Muscles get tense, digestion slows way down. Your body is getting ready to fight or run, but the threat is all in your head.
So it's like my body thinks I'm facing a tiger or something, when really I'm just worried about a meeting. This whole negativity bias thing seems a bit unfair. Can't we just tell our brains to chill out?
We can, kinda. We can learn to manage that stress response and change how we're thinking, but it takes practice. The good news is our brains are really good at adapting. We can train them to be tougher. Things like mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, those can help us notice our thought patterns and figure out better ways to deal with things.
So we're not just stuck with how our brains were wired, we can actually change how they react.
That's pretty cool. But before we get into those techniques, I'm curious about all these systems we've been talking about. The nervous system, circulatory, respiratory. How do they all actually work together? Seems like a lot going on.
Yeah, great point. It's not just about each reaction on its own. It's how everything connects. Remember we talked about dopamine widening blood vessels? That's just one example of how the chemicals in our brains affect our circulatory system.
So my happy thoughts are literally helping my blood flow. Good reason to think positive. How does this tie into, like, breathing and digestion?
Well, when we're relaxed and happy, our breathing naturally gets slower and deeper. That's because our parasympathetic nervous system, the opposite of that fight or flight one, it's in charge now. It tells our body to, rest and digest.
So taking deep breaths actually calms us down physically. I guess those meditation apps are onto something. What about digestion, though? Does our mood really change how well we digest food? Oh yeah, totally. When we're stressed, digestion slows down because our sympathetic nervous system, it puts all the energy into dealing with the threat, even if it's just in our heads. But when we're relaxed, happy, digestion works way better. It's all about balance.
This is incredible. Every thought, every feeling, everything we go through, it triggers this whole complex interaction between our systems with chemicals acting like the messengers, the organizers. But we're just getting started. We're back, and we've been, exploring this amazing world inside our bodies where everything we sense, think, and feel, it triggers this like cascade of chemical reactions and affects, well, everything from our heart rate to how well we digest our food.
And we've touched on how all these systems, nervous system, circulatory, respiratory, digestive, they don't just do their own thing right. They're always talking to each other, affecting each other. It's this whole web of connections that keeps us going.
Yeah, it's like one giant feedback loop. So for this last part of our deep dive, let's try to connect some of those dots, see how it all works together in action. So go back to that example of seeing something you really love, maybe a piece of art that just like blows you away.
Okay, so your eyes are taking it all in, the colors, shapes, everything, and sending it to your brain. And because you love it, your amygdala gets all excited, and that triggers the dopamine release, which makes you feel awesome.
Right, so I'm feeling happy, really into it. But how does that affect the rest of me? Is it just like a feeling in my head?
Nope, not at all. Remember how we talked about dopamine being a vasodilator? That means it widens your blood vessels, so blood flow increases.
So my happy brain is literally giving my blood flow a boost. Does that mean like more oxygen and nutrients are getting to my organs and stuff?
Exactly. And that can lead to, feeling good overall, physically and mentally. And don't forget about breathing. When we feel good, we naturally breathe slower and deeper.
It's like our whole body is mirroring that calm, content feeling. Is that because the parasympathetic nervous system is kicking in?
Yeah.
The one that's all about rest and digest?
Exactly. And those deep breaths, they have this ripple effect, They lower your heart rate, your blood pressure, so you feel even more relaxed. It's like a built-in way to calm ourselves down.
Wow. So many positive effects, all connected. But what about digestion? Does our mood really change how our body processes food?
Absolutely. When we're stressed out, digestion slows down because the sympathetic nervous system's like, nope, got to deal with this threat, even if the threat's just in our minds. But when we're relaxed, happy, digestion works way better. It's all about finding that balance.
So that feeling of like contentment after a really good meal, it might be more than just a full stomach. It could be all those happy chemicals and our relaxed systems all working together.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the endocrine system and the lymphatic system. The endocrine system releases hormones like endorphins and oxytocin. Those add to those good feelings. And the lymphatic system, that's a big part of the immune system. It benefits from having less stress hormones around. So our immune cells can do their job better.
So it really, like this perfectly timed, symphony, all these systems doing their part, influencing each other. It's like our body is, like a well-run society, everyone working together for the common good.
I like that. It really shows how interconnected we are on every level, and all this interplay, it shapes everything, our experiences, our health, even how we see the world.
It's pretty amazing when you really think about it. This deep dive has given me a whole new appreciation for what's going on inside me all the time. It's like this whole hidden universe of activity, and the chemicals are like the messengers, the conductors, creating the music of our lives. And it makes me wonder, if we can affect all these systems just with our thoughts and actions, what other amazing abilities do we have that we're just starting to figure out? Until next time, keep diving deep.